Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, your favorite Giants podcast. I'm your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan, and we are back on a Wednesday morning for you. Cranky Fan was a little too wrapped up in Knicks fever last night.
I am still, the voice is not quite 100% back yet. I was at the Garden watch party for game one, and you know, there are teams, Grump, that I hate more than anybody. And the Dallas Cowboys and the Eagles fit into that category. You know, Florida Panthers in hockey, obviously Florida State, as you guys probably know at this point, but the Celtics are right up there in that group. And to beat those pricks on their home court after they blew a 20-point lead was pretty nice, pretty special. I mean, they probably will lose this series in five, but that for one night made it all worth it. So let's go Knicks.
On Cinco de Mayo, no less.
That's true. I know I didn't even realize that until like later on in the evening last night.
Yeah, same.
Cinco de Mayo is so much more of a big deal in like growing up in Tampa. Like every bar and every restaurant went nuts. And here, whatever.
You're in the wrong state at the wrong time of year, I guess.
Darn.
Um, yeah, so I, on the other hand, was more like relaxing. I don't have any Devils to watch anymore. I am not a basketball guy, and I am kind of just sort of becoming human again after like my draft season rush of cramming. It really feels like finals are over for me.
Yeah. Well, you
Um,
got it. You got an A+ in my report card, Grump.
oh well,
So
thank you. Yeah.
yeah,
I appreciate that.
yeah.
Um, So we're just kind of like talking now that the draft is over. We're gonna enter into this second wave of free agency, where like the A tier guys that haven't signed anywhere yet, which most years isn't somebody like Aaron Rodgers. You know what I mean? It's somebody that's A tier like that, but they're not just not signed because they're assholes. They're just not signed because they're actually playing leverage. And then a lot of B tier free agents start moving around this time too. So uh, but the Giants should not be too active in that. Right now, they are, I believe they're over the cap. I think they're over the uh, player count list. Like, I think there's 92 players signed. Like, they have to cut two guys just to get to the right roster size. So this is pretty much the post draft Giants are pretty much what we're going to get. But I think that there'll be one or two key very cheap veteran signings in like the training camp time, like a Cole Beasley from like a year ago.
Yeah.
Um, but this is more or less what we got. Where are you with that? Like, where do you
It,
see, like, where are you looking at this? Like, I don't know about this, but I do feel good about this. And what about that? You know what I mean? Like, give me your kind of overall assessment of the roster, just player wise.
um, I'm looking at this season really as a transitional year for me, where wins and losses are not going to be as important as to me as we have to be finally aligned on what this team is going to do. This roster is almost fully created now by Joe Shane. Players that have been selected to fit exactly what Brian Dable wants to do on offense. That final piece of the puzzle, getting their quarterback, has been obtained. So we're almost kind of like, you know, circling the airport until it's time to land the plane when Jackson Dart actually becomes the starting quarterback. So, you know, I think the most important thing from this season is going to be optics more than anything else. I think this, you know, all indications that I have, watching, the actions of this team, not necessarily the words of what Mayer might have said on Hard Knocks or on a press conference or on a reporter gaggle or anything, is he is giving this administration the leeway to execute their plan. I think when you draft a quarterback that that everybody believes is not going to start on day one, month one, you know, game 12, who knows, that you are allowing this coaching staff to groom that guy and see it through. It's not just a quick fix, uh, even draft pick. So I think, the only thing that curtail this from progression into next year, when Dart should be the starting quarterback at that point, is another complete meltdown season. And I think we've done everything we can to raise the ceiling of what this team will be. I mean, I really don't think, again, barring catastrophic injuries, you know, you're never going to see, I don't think you're going to see Tommy DeVito level play at quarterback, which will, you know, destroy your whole offense. Uh, I'm hoping the offensive line can hold up. That we really haven't addressed as much of the depth issues that we would have liked to. So that's going to be a concern. But assuming we have relative health in the offensive line, I don't think you're going to see the shit show on offense that we have seen the last couple of years. And without that offensive line not being a shit show, that's going to help the defense, which should be, you know, significantly better. I don't think this is going to be a Hall of Fame defense, but one that, will cause trouble for an opposing quarterback, get them off their cadence and their timing and stuff. So I think my expectation going into this season is, you know, I think we're going to see functional football. I don't know how much of winning football it's going to be as far as, you know, sniffing around for the playoffs, but I don't think this is going to be a broken football team like we've seen the last couple of years. And hopefully this fan base is as patient as they are of mine, that they were given the morsel of drafting a quarterback, that they give this quarterback every opportunity to succeed by, this coaching staff, this general manager hanging around to next year to kind of see it through.
So it's not exactly the same. So basically, to surmise for you,
Yeah.
The selection of Jackson Dart
Mm-hmm.
is really the rudder that turns the ship.
Yes.
So for you, this whole year is almost just like a blackboard ready to be erased, and it's, you're still figuring out the math problem. Like,
I think this is actually. I think last year was erase the blackboard and start over. I think we are solving the math problem right now.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I think next year is, here's my answer, I'm ready to turn my test into the teacher. I think this year is executing that math problem.
Okay. Yeah. I follow you. All right. How do you like them apples?
Yeah.
We're all the way back to Boston with this analogy. So yeah, I agree. And I think that the selection of Jackson Dart is automatically, more or less, barring something enormous, game changing shift in direction here, buys Joe Shane and Brian Dable another year. They're almost certainly here through 2026. There's plenty more I want to talk about with that, but first, we're starting with one segment of what you said there, and that was that Jackson Dart should not be starting at any point this year. Now, I know you don't mean that necessarily verbatim, right? Like, there might be some garbage time games at the end of the year or something like that, but it's not exactly the same situation. But when Daniel Jones was selected, Eli Manning was still here for a full season. And we know that Eli was kind of a noodle arm at this point, in addition to just being a statue, which he always was. And so pretty much what he had going for him at this point was just his mind. You know what I mean? And his leadership ability that was having him propel forward. But nevertheless, Daniel Jones got, like, if I remember right, like almost no first team snaps or like through all summer. And then week 3, there was a cataclysmic shift. He's starting week 3.
Yeah.
You don't anticipate, like, what's the earliest that you see Jackson Dart coming in realistically? Like,
to start or just to play?
To start, not due to injury.
At the bare minimum, when this team is eliminated from the playoffs.
Okay. So we're hoping, like, it'll be cold out.
Yeah, I mean, we're hoping is we see him next year. That's what we're hoping. put it that way. Um, this is an interesting situation too because I don't feel like this isn't a wasted year where okay, if Russell Wilson gets this team in the playoffs, it's not a okay, who cares? It was just Russell Wilson. This team, if they're going to make the playoffs, it's because not just of Russell Wilson, the increase in playing quarterback, it's that there is a core of this team that's actually getting better. You know, having Abdul Carter means now that we have a pass rush that's really causing havoc. You know, there's growth in the secondary that we can actually maybe cover someone or two. We have a nice rotation at running back now. The offensive line was kind of healthy. You know, John Michael Smith might probably figuring out at center. So it's this team isn't just a quarterback away from making the playoffs at the end of last year. If we actually do make the playoffs, it's going to be more than just well, there was a a fill in the gap guy for right now with Russell Wilson. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that. Yeah. And that's the exciting part, right? Like if Russell Wilson brings his team to the playoffs, it it does two things. I think it validates the fact that well, does it do two things? I mean, for certain it does the one thing, and that is it means that there is a core of players who are either getting better, have just been assembled, like the missing pieces have finally hit,
Mm-hmm.
or are being maximized by a change at quarterback that's not like out of the garbage heap. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like with like Drew Lock or Tommy DeVito or Tyrod Taylor. Like
I think the biggest thing for it's not even the Jackson Dart signing that's is going to save jobs. I really think it's Russell Wilson, and and I'll be fair, even
Winston.
Jameis Wilson or Jameis Winston. I didn't even want to say his name. I hate him so much, but they raised the floor so much on quarterback play from what we've seen. Where I don't think it becomes unwatchable garbage and people screaming for this coaching staff to get fired. I think it takes some heat off because they'll be competent play. And I think that is the bridge that's needed to get to Jackson Dart. I don't think just if this team is as bad looking on the field as they did last year, I don't think, well, next year's is Jackson Dart saves their jobs. But their play, even if we are 7-10, but we're kind of competitive. We don't get blown out of any games, but we're not completely mediocre. That's enough to keep them because of that promise. And I think that's Russell Wilson, I think, saving their jobs by being our quarterback.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So here's another thought, right? So I'm sure that there are plenty of fans that are out on Shane, and I'm sure that there's like a segment of fans that are somewhat out on Dable as well for a variety of reasons. I'm not saying they're right or wrong, but I'm sure
Mhm.
that they probably cringe at the thought of just another guaranteed year for Shane and Dable. You know what I mean? And it's not guaranteed, but it's we're getting the stone and the chisel out,
They're getting. I think they're suffering the effects of being bad for a decade as opposed to
and
what
that's fine.
yeah, yeah.
But here's a thought. Let's just say like 25 overall is not super high in the draft. Now, it doesn't mean anything. Well, what it means is it's that's the amount of confidence I guess a team has in you, especially when they have a third pick overall, right?
Hmm.
Picking you 25th overall is like, well, we didn't think you were going to make it to our pick at 34, but, we didn't really even bother trying to trade into the teens or the top 10, like, you know what I mean? This is what we think of you, kind of sort of, right? Um let's just say the beginning of Jackson Dart's career, wins and losses wise, goes similar to Mark Sanchez's. First 2 years that he starts, so 2026, 2027, that's year 2 and 3 for him on his rookie deal. He goes to the NFC Championship game and loses. Now in his fourth year, you're probably exercising a fifth year option almost definitely, right?
We did it with Daniel Jones, who won one playoff game.
But it's weird, right? Because like the idea of that is to get an extension done. And then he shits the bed year 4, but you've already exercised the option. So now it's like, now you're really going to have to pay him the fully guaranteed salary. Basically, what I'm saying is Jackson Dart at 25th overall, let's just say he does well for a little bit. Does Brian Dable outlive Jackson Dart? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, okay. So if he goes to the NFC Championship game, 100% yes.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, when you think about it, Rex Ryan showed up with the Jets, and they're obviously a different caliber of organization. But when Rex Ryan showed up with the Jets, he kind of came married to Mark Sanchez, right? They picked him like ninth in the draft or some shit like that.
Pretty high, pretty high. But that team, I wouldn't. The first thing I don't think of that team was, well, Mark Sanchez was the
No,
quarterback. I think of
neither do I.
yeah.
But at the same time, you have a rookie quarterback go to back AFC Championship games.
Hmm.
Rex Ryan outlives Mark Sanchez there.
Yeah, because I think they went to AFC Championship games in spite of Mark Sanchez. Mark Sanchez wasn't, a better
He was very
example.
Brock Purdy.
Yeah, he was a better example than Trent Dilfer was with the great Ravens team, but
Sure. Yeah.
he wasn't the this is why we're here guy. And I think
No, of
they
course
had,
not.
yeah.
But I mean, what I'm saying is, what if that's really what we end up thinking about Jackson Dart? Because in the it's easy looking back and saying, they got there because of the defense. In the moment, you have a rookie quarterback who is only making the plays that he needs to make. You know what I mean? It's not
Hmm.
like he was bad. You know what I mean? In the moment, with a young quarterback, your point of view is not that. And I know that's because I have family that are Jets fans. So you just
Yeah,
sit there and I can't argue with them. They're like, this is promising. This kid might be good.
sure.
You know what I mean? So yeah, we look back and we say that the team was there mainly because but at what point did we make that decision? After 2 good years and 2 bad years?
I kind of remember in the moment thinking, if this team had a really good quarterback, this team would be
Okay.
a definitive Super Bowl contender. I remember thinking it was at the time. Now we're talking what, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Uh, Thinking this is a little smoke and mirrorish. They're winning in spite of this guy. This guy is, he's not a negative, but he's not really a positive. They're just kind of
And there
he's
was a
doing a
lot of
great.
reliance on the run game as well
Yeah,
there.
they were doing a great job of game managing with him and letting a really good defense and a really good defensive coach take the reins on this team.
Yeah, but I mean, so I guess my scenario is basically that. Like Brian Dable, you think Brian Dable survives Jackson Dart in a scenario, right? Like a scenario, because I mean, otherwise we all agree that they're kind of right now anchor tied to each other.
Right
Jackson
now
Dart
they are.
sinks, they pull them all down. But you do see a scenario in which Brian Dable and Joe Shane can shake free from that anchor.
Sure.
Okay,
I mean,
interesting.
if this team starts winning and this organization gets into tip top shape, and we develop a really good defense and we have a solid offensive line, and it becomes apparent after 4 years that Jackson Dart's nice, but he's not going to take us to the promised land, and you move on from him. Yeah, you built a foundation. And also, if we're looking 4 years down the road and we're talking this is the end of the seventh year of this regime, we're talking about, he was coach of the year before the drop happened, and they brought him back again. So, you can look and say he's the bad time might have been a project more of the roster than it was of the coaching. And, that's more of an indictment on Joe Shane than it is on Brian Dable. But I think these two are more linked together than a Dable / Shane and the quarterback.
I I think only because the quarterback was selected 25th overall. I think if they traded up for Cam Ward at 1, you know what I mean? Now we're at a different story because that's such a premium selection.
Cam Ward is the franchise going forward, and if Cam Ward decides after next year, I don't like this coach anymore, bye bye coach.
Yeah.
I don't think Jackson Dart
Right.
is
Okay.
not
So
going to have that
that's what I'm trying to
gravitas
get
until
to.
he's
Yeah.
really, yeah.
Okay. All right. So you and I are pretty much on the same page. I do
Hmm.
think that scenario is slim where Dable outlives Dart though. I think it's possible, but I think it's slim. I do think that um
I will chalk that in a category that I would be very pleased to have happen. very honestly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Um, not as pleased as I would be if Jackson Dart is just the franchise guy, but um, I get you
If
there.
you're the if you're the franchise guy but the team still stinks, how
Mm.
much of a franchise guy are you really? I mean, how many instances in the last 25, 30 years has been like
Who said the
this?
team had to stink? Just
Yeah, that's what
saying.
I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like, how many times in the last 25, 30 years have we seen a quarterback being really, really,
Oh,
really good, but the team just sucks? I mean, it doesn't really happen. So I
yeah.
can't even think
It's
really think of an instance.
it's
Yeah.
usually the jury's out. Like you had those like Justin Herbert years with the Chargers and stuff. Like
Yeah.
even now, like
It's not like Mike Trout is being wasted on the Angels, but he's the best player in baseball, but he's on a shitty team. If you're a really good quarterback, you are just going to drag a bad team along just because you're really good.
yeah, take that, Aaron Rodgers.
I said
Um,
really good quarterbacks.
uh, so okay, here's the thing that worries me.
Okay.
I have like coaching concerns with Brian Dable. Like outside of it frustrates me that like but I also get it. Like it feels like we're got by the balls because his entire like lifeline is like I'm this quarterback guru. But like as a coach, as a game day coach, not an offensive coordinator, as a game day coach, how good is he? It doesn't always feel like we're prepared. It doesn't always feel like our game day roster is set. We did these stupid shenanigans with kicker, and I
Hmm.
don't know how much Joe Shane has to do with that, and money
Yeah,
and
I was
finances.
gonna say how much is that purely a coaching decision as opposed to an organizational
But
decision
they
for
but they
things like that.
also they also brought Graham Gano back the year before
Hmm.
from injury when he clearly still couldn't kick, and they
Right.
had another kicker on the roster.
Right.
There's, I mean, and I can't think of everything right now, but there were other roster silliness that happened with this team. Starting with, and this is equal parts between Shane and
Well,
Dable. It has to be is not having a designated punt or kick returner for years. Like just not taking that position seriously and just put a running back there. Like no, you get somebody who can catch the ball first and foremost. That kind of silliness.
this is a discussion I've had with my Florida fan friends of talking about Billy Napier, where I think there's two types of coach. I think there's coach that no matter what your roster is, prevents you from being really good. And I think there's coach like if you have a much better roster, you can overcome that type of stuff. Does that make sense? And
Uh,
I don't know. We've had a kind of a bad roster. Just really like some of these things, like some of this like little roster tweaking stuff. Is it that much of a big deal when the overall roster is so much better than?
yes.
So that's kind of the thing. It's like he's suffering from. He has to be better as a coach around the margins to make this team better to outkick what their roster is, and he's certainly not doing that. The question is he not that good of a coach where we have a better roster and he's preventing a good roster from succeeding?
I don't think so. But at the same time, it's like it's hard to tell because we are bad, right? So like
Hmm.
these decisions, like every decision in football is like it can be the world. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
When to use
Yeah.
a challenge and that sort
Yeah.
of thing, like using your timeouts wisely, run, pat, whatever. Um, the only thing that like I like rolled my eyes at half the decisions because it didn't matter because we were getting our ass kicked anyway.
Right.
But in a tight game would have been and we had instances like even and they said that Tyrod Taylor had this audible or whatever, but like in the Buffalo game,
Hmm.
letting the clock run out at the end of the half because they called a run at the goal line with no timeouts left. um
Was he calling plays at that point, or was
no
it?
no 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 but the point is that the first thing that Dable did was turn and scream at Kafka, who said he didn't call that play, which they later said that Tyrod Taylor audibled it, whatever. The point
Right.
being is that like that was a that's an example of just one bad decision actually causing a game. You know what I mean? Um,
Well, the Washington game last year with the kickers, that
with the
cost
kickers,
us a
that
game.
did cost us a game. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do have concerns about that, and it's just like it's just frustrating to. I mean, it's relieving now to be at the point where you have the quarterback picked, but it's frustrating that it's just like that seems to be his job security. It's like I'm the quarterback guy. Get me a quarterback, and I can do my thing. Just waiting this long to get to that point sucks. But you know what? I'm not saying it's the wrong thing. I'm just saying how I feel, and it stinks because I don't know if we talk about that enough. That like Dable as a game day head coach makes wacky choices, right?
Yeah, and then the other thing too is, we focus primarily on the Giants, right?
That's true.
And does other 31 other fan bases that are like scratching their heads at this anecdotal decision that cost us this game 2.5 years ago at Buffalo, or this one game last year. I feel like we're always in such the weeds with the Giants that we can point out every single one of those. But is it something where every single week we're like, okay, I'm going to point out these are the three things that were like that could have cost us the win right there? I don't feel that necessarily with Dable. I think
No.
I think the ones that kind of stick out are high profile ones. The Washington game for sure. Um, that Buffalo one, I mean, we were there, so that kind of sticks. That'll be in our memory more than just some random game we're watching in a bar on a Monday night. But I don't get the sense that week in and week out, I'm saying we lost that game because of coaching, or that put us in unnecessary jeopardy. I'm not saying he's the greatest coach of all time, but I don't think he's. I don't. My overall assessment of him is not buffoonery.
No, I would agree with that. It's not buffoonery, but my point is that the reason I can't tell how much of an impact it is because we're already losing by 21 points just based on
Yeah,
skill.
and we're playing close games where if we were better, we'd be winning games. So it kind of
That's true.
those decisions are more amplified because they're more of a factor. And again, back to my Napier thing was in college it's different because the margin of victories are so much greater in college than the pros. So like if you have a much better college roster, you're kicking everybody's ass and you don't really have those like is Nick Saban a really good game coach? Well, I don't know. The vast majority of games he coached for Alabama, they were kicking everybody's ass. So I really don't know if
Yeah.
is there enough body of evidence to say Nick Saban is a fantastic game coach because of all these games late in the fourth? There just isn't there for someone like Billy Napier, because every friggin' week the Gators are playing in these low scoring, very close games, and every little move is amplified. So I don't know that. Um, you know, we hired Brian Dable, like you said, to be a quarterback guy, to bring in his guy to develop a quarterback to hopefully get the next Josh Allen or the next whoever. And for circumstances, you know, maybe the fool's gold of winning that playoff game and thinking that Daniel Jones was the guy when he may not have been, or not knowing what the injury situation would have been him, just kind of prevented that from ever happening sooner than we want it to happen. But what I always say, what's past is prologue. It's 2025. We are finally at that position of why we got him. Let him do his job. I don't think if is he costing us wins that prevent us from making the playoffs this year. We'll find out this year, and then an evaluation will have to be made by Mara and Tish and whoever is the cost of him greater than the value he's providing to get his quarterback ready and see what's happening.
I that is kind of funny to think about. Is Nick Saban a good game day coach? Um, it's a good point. I agree. I'm with you. Um, so let's go through some expectations here, right?
Sure.
Um, we don't know the schedule yet, but we do know the opponents, and it's
Mm-hmm.
tough sledding this year.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, this is based on our expectations from last year, so it's always like a
And
grain of salt, but it's not quite as egregious as like the preseason college football rankings. But
right.
like
And
this is
also
based in some level of reality.
we're also looking at that perceived difficult schedule from the own prism of where our team isn't that good anyway. So that makes all these games seem harder.
That would be correct. So I just sorry, I'm like kind of choking, and I don't have water here. Um, so
See, he can see me, but I can't see him when we do this show. So I didn't know what was going on there.
um, here are the Giants' opponents. Okay,
Okay.
at home, you have your three division games: Dallas, Philly, Washington.
No walks in the park for any three of them.
No, the Giants might very easily be the consensus favorite to be the worst team in this division. Um,
Yep.
Green Bay, Minnesota, Kansas City, the Chargers, and San Francisco. That's just home. Is there a single win in there?
I was just gonna say my initial thought was it's conceivable this team goes 0-8 or whatever, 0-7 at home this year.
Yeah. I mean, that. Now, away, you have your same three division games, except they're all harder. Um, Dallas, Philly, Washington, Chicago, okay. New England, okay. New Orleans, okay. Vegas, okay. Detroit, Denver. So what did I just say? 4 possible wins?
Well, the one thing we have the schedule is, that last game of the year
Hmm.
is a division game, and we could get lucky and face a Philly again where they're completely meaningless.
Or a
Or or,
Washington that's
or
complete.
it's right. That's one of those two teams will either be the division winner or a strong wild card, and probably locked in their spot. So that might be, sneaking a win. But that's a
On
schedule quirk. That's not
yeah.
an
And
assessment of how good we are versus them.
on the flip side, it could be a Dallas team in the hunt
That's true.
fighting for something. So it
Yeah,
may that even that's not like a lock.
right.
Um I'm not fully sold on the Broncos yet. I don't really know what to think of that, but it is away. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
love that.
Nope.
Um
But have you felt like, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but does the smell test for you for the last couple of years feel like we play a little better on the road than we do at home?
yes. Well,
Yeah.
I
So
mean like I think there's a straight up inverse correlation to like Daniel Jones at home. I don't think necessarily was a him thing. It was a crowd thing.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
because I'm thinking of like the signature wins in the past 5 years, and I feel like they've all been on the road. Whether it was the playoff win or that win in Tennessee the first year of the Dable regime, or it feels like this team is bad, but I feel like we're a little more successful on the road or more competitive on the road.
or there's just not that many memorable games.
That might be true too.
I'm not
So
sure. I'm
banging.
not trying to be an asshole,
No, that's true. That's true.
but
I mean, what's the most memorable home win we've had in the last 5 years? With the Vito win against Green Bay?
yeah, I mean that's very true. I would even say, well, I mean, I would say memorable in that
Oh, that fucking win list this year when
beat the
we
Colts.
yeah,
Well,
that's memorable. That's infamous more than memorable,
I
but
was gonna say the other Colts win, the one where they just beat the shit out of them in 2022 to end the season.
was it memorable because we had club seats more
No,
than
I
anything?
mean, I think it was memorable because it was a game where they were just truly in control of that game from start to finish.
Yeah, that was an ass kicking. That's true.
Yeah, and it was like I'm pretty sure there was a Daniel Jones chant that went through the stadium at that point. Like I'm not
Yeah.
kidding. Like that was
No, no.
if you're talking signature wins, it's hard to ignore it. I also seem to remember. This might just be a personal one for me. The Bears game, which was also like the one of the legacy games or whatever.
I
Um,
can't. See, that I can't even remember that
okay,
one.
yeah.
Yeah,
It
see.
doesn't matter.
No, yeah. But the point being, though, we haven't been talking for 55 minutes about the most memorable Giant wins in the last 5 years. We kind of stopped, after my third breath.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Um. That being said, I've given you the opponents. If you had to right now today, May 6th, 7th, 6th,
May 6th. May 6th.
May
Yes.
6th, throw a dart at a win-loss total. What do you got for me?
6.
Yeah, 6-11, right? That's what I said.
Yeah, yeah.
So
But I feel better about that 6 than maybe I would have felt about a 6 last year. Like
okay,
I feel it's like an ascending 6. Because again, I said it in the beginning of the show, and I'm going to say this until I'm blue in the face, and you people are going to hate me for saying it. Win-loss record is not a parameter for me for anything this year. I'm looking at, is this team trending up? Is this team, you know, wins or hope? This team is. I think I'm going to buy some hope with this team. So this 6 doesn't bother me as much as it's a solid 6 as opposed to a ugh, 6 wins. Make sense?
it absolutely does. And I feel I'm trying to formulate this thought, right? Like, I want to say that I've been saying that for years. It might have only been a year that I've been saying it, though. Where it's just like, I want to see us scoring points. You know what I mean? Like, I understand that the wins come eventually, but like, wins don't. There's no sustainability in having an offense that scores less than 20 points per game.
Well,
If you have a rogue year where you win a lot, that's awesome, but I'll never expect it to replicate at that same level. So I want to see points, and I
let
feel like I've been saying that for a while.
let's be very honest about this team. The one glaring hole on this offense right now is offensive line depth.
Okay.
And if this offensive line can stay reasonably healthy for a vast majority of the year, there's no reason this can't be a fully functional, even halfway decent offense. We have if Russell Wilson is 60% of peak Russell Wilson, that's still a pretty decent quarterback. We have a playmaking wide receiver. We have a nice complement of wide receivers around him. Nothing, that's going to go to the Pro Bowl, but, competent. We have a nice little stable of running backs that might get better if Skybu actually, if he can pass block and get into the rotation more. We have a coach who is an offensive-minded coach who's supposed to be, a good schemer. And I think we are past the point now of it's hard to scheme to score points when you're trying to scheme to,
Function.
not lose 30 yards every play and turn the ball over everything. It's a difference. Your place, your scheming and your play calling can be a little more aggressive. So I'm expecting this offense to be halfway decent. I don't think it's going to, cause fireworks and me to be shock and awe, but I definitely think this team should be able to score some points.
Let's put a pin in the offensive line depth for a second because it's a good point, but it's a separate one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that brings me to my question. So the Giants go 6-11, but
Mm-hmm.
they score 25 points per game
Mm-hmm.
overall for the year. I'm sure there's a group of fans that want Dable and Shane fired for that, but I don't think it happens. You don't think it happens. But does Shane Bowen get fired if they go 6-11, scoring 25 plus points per game? Now remembering also the opponents that they have to play. So I think about this question because immediately in my mind, the thought is 6-11 is an ugly record. It's another ugly record. They are rolling with Shane and Dable again because the quarterback hasn't played yet. But does somebody's head have to roll? The immediate thought is Shane Bowen, but is that fair? Did they even upgrade the defense enough for him to just? I mean, like, they're my thought is like they spent so much money and assets on defense this year. They got Javon Holland and they got Paulson Adebo, and then they went out and they got Abdul Carter and Darius Alexander, and then they got some other pieces on the defensive line. But really, when you think about it, they replaced Adoree Jackson and Jason Pinnock with, younger, but they're high upside players. You know what I mean?
All right, so let me let's take this scenario into account first before we make that call. So, do you know if the Giants average 25 points a game, where do you think that ranks like last year, where would that rank in scoring average per game?
Upper third.
It would be ninth. So
So yes.
yeah, yeah. The teams ahead of them would have been in reverse order: Green Bay, Cincinnati, Washington, Philly, Tampa Bay, Buffalo, Baltimore, Detroit. Those are all playoff teams, right?
They are, but I mean, some of them are like Tampa Bay.
L-
Go ahead.
I see what you're saying, but the bigger picture for that is the odds of that team going 6-11 with scoring 25 points would have to be such a catastrophic meltdown of a defense that, to me, probably happened because we have multiple injuries to key guys. Dexter Lawrence out for the year for something. Kayvon Thibodeau out for the year. Two guys in the secondary out, and we're bringing literally guys off the street. So I I think if this offense is, I think he's safe to answer your question. I think for that scenario to happen to have that bad of a record, it's going to be more because the offense isn't really good as much as as much as the defense being really bad.
Well, so here's the thing: 25 points per game is an average, right? Like you can rack
Mm-hmm.
up points against your New Englands and your Chicago's, but like, isn't it conceivable that the Eagles beat us by scoring more than 25 points? The Commanders, Dallas, maybe not, but Green Bay, yeah.
Yeah,
Kansas City, yeah. The
but I'm
Chargers,
also looking
yeah.
but I'm also looking at our schedule is it's weighted so much more on good teams than bad teams that if we're scoring 25 as an average, you know, it's a pretty good offense.
Yeah, no, I'm
Yeah,
agreeing with
yeah,
you.
yeah.
But I just feel like it's possible that the offense could be damn good. You know, okay, maybe 25 points if it ranks them ninth. Let's just say they rank 13th in scoring.
Okay.
Okay, now they're 4 spots lower, but they still went considering the opponents. Does Shane Bowen really have to roll for that? I mean, of course it's going to be performance, right? Performance
Yeah.
related. Like we're speaking in high generalities here, and I get it. But I mean, I think the point I'm really kind of driving home is that like they upgraded the defense, but I don't think, but they spent a lot, and I feel like they only upgraded like a bit right now, immediate impact. Like I don't know that Darius Alexander is going to play a ton to start the season. I think he might start picking up more and more of a workload in the middle of the season, finding his stride then. Abdul
Right.
Carter, same way. And they may not even know exactly where they want to put Abdul Carter right away. You know what I mean? Um, you know, I don't know. Like it's possible that Tyler Nubin doesn't really take a step in any direction. I have questions at linebacker. There was no move made to linebacker at all, and it was kind of a problem last year. So
So
I don't know.
with all that taken into account, you know, you're moving on from defensive coordinator as a scapegoat, or you don't know what you're doing as an organization. So I think he's safe.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope so, and I'm not like a huge fan of Shane Bowens. I'm not a fan of like that idea that like somebody's head's got to roll.
Oh,
Like,
I don't agree with it either, but I think everything is politics. In a lot of these positions, and
sure.
someone that I don't know how many more cards Brian Dable has to play if this team is 6-11, and if he offers if he offers his head on a platter or on a pike, you know, that might be the okay. That's your last card you can play. The next head that rolls is yours, and that might be a thing. I mean, again, it's only his second year
Hmm.
as defensive coordinator, so it's not like okay, for 4 years this defense has sucked. We've completely changed the roster on this defense to fit what you want to do, and it still sucks. I mean, the roster's still kind of in transition from Wink. There's young guys coming in. There's not a lot of talent, not a lot of depth overall. I I think if he does get smoked, I think it's purely for scapegoatism, and I don't think it's because of performance.
Gotcha. Yeah. I will say it feels a little bit like Brian Dable's DC spot is kind of more politics than anything, but
Mhm.
not a ton of evidence there. So, all right. So let's get to the depth on the offensive line.
Mhm.
You're 100% right. They are pretty much rolling with the depth that they had last year. Biggest addition being Marcus Bowe, but again, it's another year where it's not a premium asset that they used. Is he a premium guy? Maybe. He was viewed that way by a lot of people pre-draft. So,
But you're hoping to develop a guy who's going to be a backup, is what we did,
yeah,
right?
yeah, kind of.
That's it. I mean, we got one guy that we want to develop that we hopefully could be a rotation guy. That's I don't feel I won't sleep better at night thinking that this offensive line is solved from a depth perspective. And okay, somebody goes down, for a snap or 3 weeks, that I don't have to worry about anything. I'm still in that same fear.
Yeah, and it's such a shitty feeling, because this draft went exactly the way I would have done it and the way I would have expected, right? I'm taking Abdul Carter at 3. I'm going to trade up to get my quarterback. That guy is Jackson Dart because he feels like the right fit for Brian Dable. And then, from there on out, Darius Alexander, and then every other pick that happens down the line. But that move from 34 to 25, you walked away from. This draft was loaded with tackles.
Yeah.
And I had said that, like, I just felt like they couldn't leave this draft without a plan behind Andrew Thomas, a plan at right tackle next year. It has to happen in this draft. There's too much talent at offensive tackle in this draft to walk away without that, and they did. And I can't even argue with why they did. You know what I mean?
How many of those, tackles you thought were worth it were still around when they drafted Scadaboo?
No, zero.
Okay.
By Scadaboo, yeah. I mean, by Darius Alexander. Alexander was the clear pick to make. The tackles left were not good.
Well, I guess my response for that is, if Jackson Dart's your guy, getting a good quarterback is more important than getting an offensive lineman.
Well, getting your guy. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Getting the guy you think that you're basically staking your job on. That's how confident you are in this guy. You traded up for him. You said, I that's my guy. I think that's more important than getting an offensive lineman and a backup offensive lineman at that too. So I can live with it for what they did, and losing the pick that might have got him. If it was for anything else, I'd have been like, again, my priorities
yeah.
are as close to the ball as you can, and
If it were for DeAndre Baker.
yeah, I'd been like, what are you doing?
um. Yeah, backup offensive lineman really scares me. And the other thing, I feel like they're just throwing numbers at wide receiver through like cheap contracts and undrafted free agents. Went through all the undrafted free agents with Bobby, and like the one night was loaded with offensive guys, and it was like entirely wide receivers with one running back, one tight end, and 2 offensive linemen. The rest were all wide receivers. And then the defensive night was like 4 guys. And it just doesn't seem like a real plan to me. And I'm not saying that there was a smarter move in the draft. I don't really think that there was. Like I said, the draft went exactly the way I would have done it and the way I expected it to go. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm looking at this like Darius Slayton has a hamstring thing like every fucking year.
Yeah.
Now what? Jalen Hyatt? Or is it Bo Collins, the guy they got from Notre Dame? You know what I mean?
That's a wing and a prayer, is what that is.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I have serious questions here, and it sucks because I do think that this team has gotten significantly better, and I think that they made the right choices, and I think that last year they made the right choices, and the year before that perhaps not. The year before that probably even worse, but this is movement, I think, in the right direction, and I still feel so shitty about one injury at wide receiver. Like Wan'Dale Robinson, who the hell is our backup slot wide receiver? Who is it? I don't know.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
And so we have a
Uh,
guy who's like 150 pounds soaking wet, and between him and
and,
the abyss is
and no safety net behind him.
yeah.
Yeah. Agreed.
So I mean, and again, like maybe that's our cheap free agent signings, a Cole Beasley. You know what I mean? Something
Hmm.
like that.
There's always somebody. There's always a guy like that out there, and even if he's around for a couple of weeks, you know, there's always, I tend to value the training camp dumps. I think maybe than you do about, there's somebody out there we can pick up and we can who could be serviceable. Because again, you're looking for something, you're looking for serviceable. You're looking for the safety net in those pickups.
That's fair.
You know, So you know,
And
if we're coming out,
I guess if you're starting the year fully healthy, right? Like just say you make it out of training camp, everyone's ready to go week 1, no issues. Yeah, roster cut down day, you could probably sign an outside wide receiver and a slot wide receiver that are cap casualties, camp casualties. Get them in here and be like, you guys got 6 weeks till somebody gets hurt. Figure out this offense. And like, as long as you're all the way healthy, I think that actually works, right?
mm-hmm.
That's fair. It just stinks not to
Yeah.
walk into it into training camp ready. You know what I mean? Where you have time to really learn the offense and
We're
gel as a team and communicate.
we're just not there as a roster in totality there we can solve all the world's problems every year. I mean, we're still going to have, until we're at that point, there's going to be things that just couldn't be addressed because we have to worry about other things. And I think that's, I value the offensive line and offensive line depth, I think, very, very highly. And, I get frustrated that, well, all we did is got one guy who's a project. That doesn't make me feel great, but, you know, we also we plugged a lot of other holes for things that we needed.
Yeah, I would agree.
And it's just, teams that already have really good rosters and playoff teams, they just need to make one or two kind of moves and they can address it, and they can allocate dollars for it or draft picks for it or whatever, make a deal for someone. We're kind of like playing whack-a-mole right now still. And when you do whack-a-mole, you're addressing some of your problems, but not all of them.
How far away, in your estimation, is this roster from solving all the world's problems?
If solving the world's problems means I write that we're a playoff team in pen,
Hmm. I don't
that
know
to
if
me
that.
is
I don't know about writing it in pen, but being that's the expectation. Like I expect to go to the playoffs this year. I want that. That's a
I
reasonable
want
feeling.
what I don't think it's reasonable to expect to be in the playoffs this year.
No, correct. So
Yeah.
the year what I'm asking you is how far are they from being a team that you think it's reasonable for them to go to the playoffs?
2 years. Because we have decided that Jackson Dart is our future. He's not going to play this year. If he does, it's going to be immaterial. Next year, he's basically a rookie. He's going to have his growing pains on the field. The year after his second year, I expect, we've made our commitment to him. He'll be in his third camp, his second year of playing. I expect if he is our franchise quarterback, we should be in the playoffs in his second year.
Okay,
with
yeah, that's fair.
with this continued, year what 6 of this regime.
Yep.
Yeah, that to me is, I'm putting it in pen that my expectation is we're in the playoffs, or if not, we blow the whole thing up and we start over.
Yeah, I that all makes sense to me. But just so people understand what 2027 looks like, I believe that's like the last year of Andrew Thomas's contract. I have it open right here, so just give me one.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's.
Well, it's always going to be something. I mean, guys are always going to be leaving, and it's like college. Like every year, well, this guy's a senior this year, and
Oh, I'm sorry. No, he's in through 2029, but
okay.
that's when his contract
What's Dexter Lawrence?
starts getting cuttable, and I think Dexter Lawrence is either 28 or 20.
Okay, so your foundational pieces will be there. Your foundational quarterback will be there. Your foundational wide receiver should still be there. Uh, you know, if John Michael Schmitz figures it out, he should still be there.
I'm sorry, I was wrong. 2027, that would be the last year of Dexter Lawrence's contract. So he'll either be on an extension by that point,
Mm-hmm.
or we better be like, you better win this one, kid.
Kayvon Thibodeau should.
Uh,
I'm gonna roll the dice and say that he's gonna be re-signed. I don't think he's gonna get a mega deal or anything, but I think he's gonna.
he's worth more in New York than somewhere else.
I just think it. I don't know if he's got like, yeah, I don't know if people around the league are like, I am ready to open the checkbook up and just go nuts with him. Because if
Uh,
that's the case, it'd be a no-brainer. We would sign him.
I'm gonna be honest. Like he was just the edge guy in an edge class. Like I don't know.
I think people have
I
done.
yeah. He can't be separated from being picked fifth or whatever he was picked. But
Gotta get
like
over that. People have to get over that.
he really wasn't like a top 5 guy.
He had the name and he had the reputation. And he had the marquee value, which kind of heightens expectations too.
Right.
I I think if this team was overall better, I think there'd be a lot less griping about Kayvon Thibodeau.
Yes.
I think this fan base is in such a pissy foul mood anyway that everything, like when you're sick, every symptom hurts more,
Mhm.
and I think that Thibodeau, the criticism he gets, I think is a little like an irritated rash. He's not that bad as people make him out to be.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Um.
Which is why I think the Giants will re-sign him.
Yeah, and I don't think that his market value is going to be a ton.
Mhm.
And yeah, I agree. Um, especially I he'll his amenability for not taking a huge bag and going somewhere else will be uh widened or heightened, I guess, if Jackson Dart is coming along, right? Like if this team
Yeah.
is heading in a direction where he feels like he's about to, be part of something that's going to make a huge push, then, I mean, players come out of retirement to win Super Bowls. So,
Yeah.
I get it. I could see it. Do you have any this is sort of how I'm feeling about the team right now, which I think this is kind of felt like a downer episode, and I didn't mean it to be because
No. No.
I think that this is a good team. I think it's heading in the right direction. Everything went the way I expected. I did this entire offseason. You know what I mean? I called the entire quarterback situation months in advance. Um,
Let me ask you a question.
yeah,
If we were in a position, I'm not talking about the game itself, but if Cam Ward was drafted instead of Jackson Dart, would your expectations for anything be different about this year, just this year?
I would expect him to play at some point this year, but I would still want him to sit and learn for a while. And I think that would be the right call to make. But I would expect Cam Ward is further along mentally than Jackson Dart is for the NFL game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that my assessment of Cam Ward's character from 8 million miles away and never having met him ever, but my assessment of his work ethic and character is that he will win people over pretty quickly within the building. And the feeling will be that he is ready. They will be comfortable with playing him like midway through the year.
So would so going into the season, then if you're like, oh, we got this guy, you know, your outlook, not even so much wins or losses, but just your like an optimism. Because right now, to me, it's just like I almost feel like I'm evaluating Senior Bowl this
Mm-hmm.
week.
Yeah.
This year, it's like I'm evaluating who we have. I've like last year, I kind of completely divorced myself from emotion from this team because I knew how bad it was going to be. It's not that I don't want us to win. I'm not going to be devastated with losses because I don't think, and I certainly am not going to treat this season as every week a referendum on fire them, keep them, fire them, keep them. I'm not doing State of the Union every week. I think all the indications are they're going to survive again, barring catastrophe. They're all going to be back the year after. So I think I'm looking I'm positive because I'm looking for things to be positive about, and that makes me positive. I'm not looking at this team. I'm not looking at this team as like reasons to bitch. I am in search for good things and things that make me feel like we are ready for next year for our quarterback to take over and then for 27 to be a playoff team. So that to me is a positive outlook. It has nothing to do with I think we're going to win 4 games, 5 or 6. It's about being optimistic for a future. And I think without having a quarterback before, there was really nothing to be excited about, period, on this team.
Yeah.
Other
So
than hoping we get the number 1 pick or we draft as high as possible. That's a miserable way to go through life, is rooting for draft picks. I mean,
yeah.
I felt like such a douche at that bar, rooting for us to lose against Indy. I'm like, this is awful. This is the worst thing you can be as a sports fan, rooting for your team to lose and for the hope of getting somebody later. At least now we have that someone later. So it's, what are we doing around it to make that transition better and put him in the best position to succeed? And that's what I'm looking for this year.
Fair enough. That's going to do it for this episode. We'll see you guys next week for more schedule related things and Giants related news.
The schedule comes out when? A
I
week from
believe it's
today?
the 14th. Is that
Oh,
right?
so it would be a week from today then. So
we'll delay our episode, right? It'll leak like an hour before the fucking NFL Network show. Why don't we
yeah,
just do it that night?
I think we should do it as soon as it comes out because there's really not much to talk about between now and then.
Yeah.
And when the schedule comes out, I'll be on delta.com and marriott.com booking flights, but we can multitask. That'll be good.
Yeah. So there you go. There was some behind the scenes production action right there. That's what's gonna happen.
That's Hard Knocks for Just Giants.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
So we'll see you guys then. We're gonna do our episode the night of the schedule release, and then I'll put it up. I'll put it up immediately if I can. Yeah.
Yeah, raw.
Yeah,
raw dogging it, baby.
We're not gonna go through game by game like win loss. That's
nope.
like a whole summer exercise we're gonna do. So we're gonna go through and just kind of look at the schedule and point out our initial reaction. This looks silly. This doesn't. How about
this looks brutal?
Week?
Oh, yeah. we're booking this trip. That's for sure. Like that, all fun stuff like that because we need to have fun this off season.
So stay tuned for that. We'll see you guys next time. Until then, let's go Giants.
Go Giants.